Fort Flood Relief, call 448-3159.
Record rainfall brings record floods.
We got a log jam there that's killing us. If we get...
Yeah, in 86 it was bad, but not like this.
A state of emergency in 6 western Washington counties.
Try to get as many out as we can.
Thousands of people forced to leave their homes and nearly all of their belongings behind. Farm country still soaked gets saturated again, trapping cattle. More than 3.5 inches of rain in the cities leaves very few in western Washington high and dry.
It is literally, from our perspective as well, a 1 in 100-year flood. We've been operating the dam since 1911, and we've never seen flows like this.
Hello, I'm David Curley. It seemed like just another Thanksgiving holiday weekend, but it quickly became a weekend to remember. Record rains brought furious floods, the worst this state has seen in decades. As people were driven from their homes, an unbelievable sight on Lake Washington. The old I90 bridge filled with water quickly, sinking to the lake bottom. Some incredible sights, sounds, and stories. It was a weekend to remember.
When news happens, you'll see it happen on King 5. And now, with all the news for Western Washington, Gene Anderson and Mike James, Shelley Monahan's weather, and Tony Ventrella sports. This is King 5 News at 11.
The snow, at first a relief to flood victims, is now starting to melt. More flood warnings tonight, and a worry that this may happen once again. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike James.
And I'm Gene Anderson. The flood warnings have been reissued for 7 rivers. They are the Cedar, the White, Snoqualmie, Skykomish, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, Skagit, and Nooksack. The storm that's coming in is bringing warmer temperatures, which is causing freezing levels to rise. Heavy rain upstream could again threaten Fur Island in the Skagit, the area hardest hit by last week's flooding. And on this Thanksgiving Eve, that area remains nearly deserted. Bob Simmons was there.
A mean, cold wetness hangs over the Skagit Delta at the end of the day. The river is steady at 22 feet, 6 feet below flood stage. The river will be rising tomorrow, but Army engineers say this temporary barrier, which they finished just today, will repel the river at flood stage. If it's going to rise above flood stage, they expect a 24-hour warning, and they'll start hauling rock again. Much of the water that rolled through here a week ago Sunday has drained from the island, but much remains. Of the 500 or so chased from their homes, most cannot yet move back. Comfortable old houses take on an air of desolation on Thanksgiving Eve.
Case here, they had log in their milk. They had all this stuff here.
At the Conway Fire Station, there was turkey for anyone sent over from Skagit Valley College. Fur Island families cheered each other, traded stories, and with photographs replayed the events of the past 10 days. If the soggy river dikes hold against this new storm, then they'll be home, all of them, in time for Christmas. At Conway, I'm Bob Simmons, King 5 News.
And it's raining now at Snoqualmie Summit, too. And that could be good news for travelers headed over the pass for Thanksgiving.
Oh, Gene, that is not good news, though, not welcome news in the river valleys of western Washington. Charlotte Rayner is at the summit tonight where the freezing level just keeps moving up. Charlotte.
That's right, Michael. There is so much water here at Snoqualmie Summit. About the only thing you could do is water ski. A real letdown for snow ski operators who had high hopes earlier this week. Remember this? It snowed hard Monday, Tuesday, and part of Wednesday at the summit. So hard that operators predicted an early start of the ski season.
Things are looking real good, and with a little bit of luck, we should be able to scrape an opening this weekend.
But that was then, and this is now. The only snow falling now is sliding off roofs in the rain. About 9 inches of snow are hard-packed on the mountain, but the rain could wash even that away if it keeps up. It wouldn't hurt if you're driving over the pass tomorrow to be prepared for a change in the weather. Be sure you have snow tires, which are advised, and bring chains. Back to you.
Charlotte, we understand the temperature's moving up into the 40s at Snoqualmie tonight.
The rivers are rising across western Washington tonight, causing some spirits to fall on this Thanksgiving Day. Flood warnings are posted on at least 8 rivers.
King 5 reporter Jim Foreman joins us live from Snoqualmie, where a Phase 3 flood warning is in effect. Jim?
That's right. We are at the bridge over the Snoqualmie, and you can see the marking stick behind me, and it is slowly creeping up. The water is rising. It's rising all over western Washington. It's a good news, bad news situation tonight. The bad news is we are going to see flooding. The good news is it is not going to be as bad as 10 days ago, and that seems to be the case wherever you go in western Washington tonight. Thanksgiving brought with it a quiet, tense calm here on Fur Island. Tonight, the temporary dike is holding the water back, and the water is slowly starting to disappear. Here in Arlington, the Stillaguamish is rising fast, too. Folks here are watching the river instead of football this Thanksgiving, and the Sheriff's Department is keeping a riverside vigil, ready to tell people to move to high ground. Along the Snoqualmie and Falls City, some people are already moving out. These campers retreated to the top of the dike after the road to their campground flooded out a short time ago.
It's got potential for going, but right now I'd say if the weather stays as is, we should be okay.
We are keeping a very close eye on the steadily rising waters. It's going to be a slow, steady rise, not a big flash flood. That's what's happening, and we'll have more at 6:30 on this.
All right, Jim, a lot of people watching those rivers and watching the weather. One of those, of course, is Shelley Monahan. She's got the whole forecast for us in just a few minutes. Lori.
That Pineapple Express that Jim was talking about is bringing all this moisture, and it's washing away the snow on Snoqualmie Pass. Motorists found clear but wet roads across the mountains pass. Some had been worried the storm preceding this one would make the pass impassable, but that didn't pan out. Further down the mountain in the town of Snoqualmie, the famous falls were full with rushing water. For the curious, the sight was nothing less than spectacular. Dozens of people made the trek to the falls to witness the raging river.
Mother Nature is packing a blustery punch across western Washington. High winds and rains are making a bad situation worse in some of the areas hit hard by the recent flooding.
With more on the situation in Skagit County, King 5 reporter Larry Kelly live from Conway. Larry?
Lori and Mike, if you'll excuse a rather hackneyed phrase, it is both good news and bad news on Fur Island. The freezing level in the mountains has lowered, so that means there's less snow melt into the Skagit River. But it is raining now again here in the river basin hard, and there are other conditions that are adding to the flood threat here. The Corps of Engineers continues to pour truckloads of rock on the temporary dam at the spot where the dike on Fur Island broke 2 weeks ago. That dam, however, is just inches higher than the river, and the river is rising about 2 inches an hour. The dam is also leaking. The fill being poured in isn't dense enough to hold the water out. The heavy rain that hit this afternoon is causing the Skagit to swell again. But an even bigger problem is the wind, with gusts up to 50 miles an hour.
It's holding the tide in. We have an 11-plus tide today. It's holding the tide in the river back, so that's why we've got an increased buildup and backwater in the slough here.
Keeping the waters of the Skagit River off Fur Island is just part of the flood fight here. The winds are now pushing seawater onto the island through breaks in the dike along Skagit Bay. 4 breaks in the seawall were acting as drains for the floodwaters. They're now adding to the flooding with water that can do even more damage to the soil. Despite the threat of more flooding, many residents have returned to their homes here and starting to clean up.
We're surviving, and that's, I guess, what's important. No lives were lost in this. We just feel really fortunate that we've had friends to come and help us clean up.
About half of the 500 people who were forced to leave their homes about a week ago have now returned. They're only hoping that the dikes and the dams will hold so they won't have to leave again. Lori, Mike?
Larry, I can see just looking at you how miserable it is out there with the wind and the rain, but in the next 24 to 36 hours, are they looking for some kind of break here that will make things a bit better?
Well, only in the weather, Mike, if that happens. Again, it is raining here rather hard, and the river is expected to rise again by tomorrow morning by another maybe good 1.5 feet. So definitely the flood danger here is growing.
All right, Larry Kelly reporting live in Conway.
Well, there's more tonight, too. Problems along the Snoqualmie and the Snohomish rivers, too. The water is still pouring over Snoqualmie Falls, But the worst, we are told, is over now. Downstream, some roads remain closed tonight, washed out by the river. But the water is going down slowly along the Snoqualmie. Near Everett, along E.B. Island, the Snohomish is still rising. The combination of high river levels, a high tide and high wind sending water over the roads leading to the bridges that connect the island, stranding some people and keeping others, like the highway department, very busy.
It rose so slow, and we're able to get prepared for it and stuff. And I don't think it's going to amount to much, but it's some potential there when you look up, at the sky and stuff. It just, a lot of rain clouds and stuff out there.
Now, Dave Austin's working through the day, closing off roads. We're told most of the problem spots, though, should clear up over the weekend. Things should get back to normal sometime in the next 3 or 4 days.
Good afternoon. A state of emergency already declared in King and Pierce counties.
And the rain is expected to continue for several hours. Warm rain coupled with melting snow. Nearly the entire town of Snoqualmie is underwater this afternoon. Levees and dikes are breaking. This one near Monroe gave way earlier today. Farmland is swamped, barns and equipment surrounded by water, milk cows trapped by the rising floodwaters. And people, hundreds of them, are being evacuated, some carrying their belongings with them. Others, nursing home residents, carried to higher ground in safety. The National Guard has been called up to help with the evacuations. Flood warnings are up this afternoon for 18 western Washington rivers. Very few areas have been spared, as 5 inches of rain on the average have fallen in the past 24 hours. Many of the rivers are still rising at this hour, and the lowlands near the Sound still face a wall of water which is flowing down from the mountains.
We begin our flood coverage today to the north. One of the first places to get hit by the high waters, the Snohomish River. King 5's Jim Foreman is in the town of Monroe with a live report on floodwaters that continue to rise. Jim?
That's right. They continue to rise tonight. Actually, it's not just the Snohomish, it's the entire valley, all the different rivers that make up the part of the Snohomish Valley, and they are all out of their banks right now. Here in Monroe, the river rose fast, and the warning came quickly: get out. And folks got out any way they could, some carrying whatever they could salvage on their backs. For others, the water got high fast, and this truck stalled out on what was Highway 203. Luckily, another truck came by. The driver chained it up and pulled it to safety. But many people couldn't get out at all. Their only way out was by helicopter, and it was amazing the choppers were flying at all through the dense fog. By midday, the river was threatening the bridge linking the road from Monroe to King County. It was shut down, and another link was gone. And one last family got out by bulldozer. This afternoon, State Road 2 was shut down, creating a major traffic headache. Downstream, homes are underwater. These people got out, but no one knows what they'll have to come home to. Out there on the other side of the river is Farmer Mark Hansen's place. He's staying behind to take care of several hundred cows. His family is worried. But from Sky King, we were able to see that so far, things are holding up pretty well. In the middle of this disaster, the best is starting to show in people. There are some curious onlookers here, but most folks have come to help. And it is making a big difference.
Something like this, everyone opens up, people are telling me, hey, if someone needs a place to stay, tell them to send them to our house. We got the churches open. It's gonna work out. Everyone's gonna be fine.
There's a lot of hope here tonight and a lot of praying going on, along with a lot of worrying. We'll be watching the situation closely. If things change, we'll update you. Back to you in Seattle.
Jim, thank you for that report. We'll see you later in this newscast.
One of those rivers in Snohomish County causing plenty of damage, the Skycomish River. The valley near Monroe has become a stream. Here as elsewhere, homes and barns surrounded by water. This person was out taking a picture of the fast-running water which swept away a large piece of the road. In fact, flooded roads have left the town of Skycomish inaccessible at this hour.
In East King County, the Snoqualmie River and its tributaries are flooding towns from Falls City to North Bend. The situation there being covered by Larry Kelly.
The raging river along the Preston Falls City Road in an outrage today.
We gotta keep working.
Yeah.
We got a log jam there that's killing us. If we get
A log jam diverts the river over the roadway. County crews fight to push it back on course.
Well, it looks like we're starting to slow it down. We need more equipment, but everybody in the county needs it right now.
A couple of miles east in Snoqualmie, firefighters make rescues by boat.
Yeah, in 86 it was bad, but not like this. I've never seen it in the yard.
This is about the 8th, 9th time today so far. Okay, whenever you're ready, sir.
Get it, get it, get it. It's in there. Get it.
Police tell the town's 2,300 people to get out of town.
You got about 10 minutes before nobody goes out of town.
Is it coming that high?
Yeah. Try to get as many out as we can.
Right now, this is the only road out of Snoqualmie, but it too is hood deep in water. Further east is North Bend. Usually it escapes seasonal flooding of the Snoqualmie River. Not today. The most serious threat there is to a nursing home with 100 residents.
Okay, we'll do the best we can to get you in as quick as we can.
Evacuations continue tonight in the Snoqualmie Valley. The residents seeking safety. But the only assured places for that are Bellevue or Seattle, up to 30 miles away.
Good evening, I'm David Curley.
And I'm Lori Matsukawa. The danger from devastating flooding is not over tonight.
Most Washington rivers are still rising. Heavy rains have pushed rivers over their banks, flooding valleys and city streets.
In the next half hour in this special report, we'll have complete coverage of the devastating floods that have hit western Washington. We'll show you tonight's efforts to rescue those trapped by the floodwaters. A report from Fur Island in Skagit County, flooded just 2 weeks ago and hit again today. And Shelley Monahan will be here to tell us what to expect in the next few hours. Now, many lowland cities are only now feeling the impact of rains which fell in the higher elevations.
We go now to Jim Foreman, who is in Mount Vernon for the latest there. Jim?
Yeah, David and Lori, this is the hot commodity across western Washington tonight, a sandbag. Right now we're in Mount Vernon by the library and the fire station. You are looking at a mass of humanity. People here are volunteering their time to make sandbags, to get them out to the levee, to strengthen the dike, to keep back the Skagit. Right now, it doesn't look good. The river is still rising, crest is still hours away, and there is only just inches to go before the water starts flooding downtown Mount Vernon. It is really a scene of raw emotion here, and earlier tonight we took a trip a couple blocks from here to the river to see what happens to these sandbags. Take a look. Here at the dike, the loads arrive every 3 or 4 minutes, and that's when the teamwork picks up again. Do you think you can hold the water back?
I'm not real sure. I think everybody's trying real hard. I guess that's the best we can do.
How are the spirits holding up in town?
Everybody's doing real well. We have a good turnout right now.
With most people sandbagging or at home worrying, downtown is nearly deserted. There is an eerie calm here, and it is an eerie sight seeing the sandbag doorways. Here at the bakery, they closed up early and got everything up on the tables out of the water's way. And at the river's edge, the watch continues.
King County officials have evacuated parts of Maple Valley near Renton tonight. Homes on Jones Road southeast along the Cedar River are flooded, and the river is expected to rise even more tonight. King 5's Lisa Machette has the story.
Attention. This is the fire department. The water level of the Cedar River is now expected to rise 4 feet above its current level. All citizens living along the river or in lowland areas adjacent to the river are urged to evacuate to higher ground.
By 8 p.m., the evacuation was well underway. Many homes were already surrounded by knee-deep water, and the Cedar River was still rising quickly. A steady stream of traffic, too, some people leaving, others coming to get their belongings out before it was too late.
It might rise a little bit, you never know.
Lou Tully and his son were trying desperately to hold the river back, but the attempt seemed more and more hopeless by the minute.
There's not really a lot you can do at this point, I don't think. Just wait it out.
I mean, I don't know. You think they would at least have some sandbags for us. They could give you the bags and there's a stack of sand. Go for it.
While people scramble to beat the river, the water just keeps coming, spilling over its banks, pouring over the sandbags and barricades that were meant to stop it.
Pretty bad, isn't it?
Authorities have warned everyone to get out, but still some people hang on, even if only to stand helplessly by while their homes go under. In Renton, Lisa Machette, King 5 News.
As our coverage continues, details on the situation on Fur Island and in the Skagit Valley.
The main dike holding the Skagit River floodwaters out of Fur Island broke again today, and the river poured over onto the island, forcing a second evacuation in as many weeks. John Sandifer has the story.
The runaway river tore out a hole 150 feet wide in a dike that had just been built to repair a previous break there. 1,000 truckloads of fill, part of a $400,000 project to protect Fur Island, is being eaten away bite by bite. Fur Island is uninhabited again, and water is pouring over it. Supersaturated ground, unrelenting rain and snowmelt are creating emergencies along a 50-mile stretch of the river. This is the Cascade Highway just east of Cedar-Woolley. Nothing is moving.
Grandy Creek shut down too, so.
Shut into Granny Creek too.
Yeah, you couldn't get through there.
The small community of Hamilton is under evacuation order again. Some folks tried to drive out, others had to be rescued by boat, and still others chose to stay and take their chances.
I didn't realize how much water there was around here.
You gonna take these people down the store?
Anyway, pretty incredible.
The main concern at Cedar-Woolley is the river's encroachment into the sewage treatment plant and what that could mean.
The collection system will overflow. We'll have raw sewage coming out through the manholes onto the streets. People with basements, they'll flood.
And that was the case at the Dickinson house in Mid-City, where townspeople helped to put sandbags in place.
This is coming out of the ditches is where we're getting it. So, and now just out of the ground, as you can see, we've plugged the storm drain so no more comes up that way.
And even as engineers had abandoned their efforts on the major dike here on Fur Island, another dike was letting go near Carpenter Creek, some miles away. One resident with her home video camera recorded the tributary topping the dikes at several points and made it clear it was farmers and volunteers who put up a stand against it. They worked late into the darkness, placing sandbags along the top of the dikes and hoping the dikes themselves don't give way.
There's a lot of water out here. And I don't think people realize how much water there actually is.
In Skagit County, John Sandifer, King 5 News.
The Skykomish River did its fair share of damage today. This river near Monroe became a stream surrounding homes and barns with water. Some of the water swept away a large section of a local road. The entire town of Skykomish has been completely cut off by the high floodwaters, and construction tractors were used to rescue many of the residents there.
All the rain is causing problems closer to the cities, too. This afternoon, a luxury home in the Medina neighborhood near Bellevue was destroyed by a mudslide. Nearby homes were evacuated. Heavy rain pounded the area above the homes, saturating the ground. Finally, around noon today, the earth gave way, crushing the house and nearly pushing it into the lake.
The homeowner was inside the residence when it collapsed, but he was able to break a window and get out in time.
A gas line broke when the home began sliding. Authorities were worried about the danger of explosion and more slides, so homes near the site were evacuated. The house was in the 1400 block of Evergreen Point Road. In Des Moines, the intersection of Marine View Drive and Des Moines Road was a lake. Even the biggest trucks had water lapping at their headlights. This truck got stuck when the road beneath it collapsed, trapping the occupants. And water from flood-swollen Barnes Creek is threatening residents of the Willows apartments. On the Benson Highway and 208th, slow going for vehicles. Drainage ditches filled up fast and flooded the streets. Near SeaTac, Highway 518 needed help. Workers had to unclog storm drains in water that was almost thigh deep.
The Snoqualmie River is once again creating nightmares for residents of East King County. King 5 environmental reporter Scott Miller has the details on that river.
The people of Snoqualmie have seen floods before. The town, after all, shares its name with a river that seems to spill over its banks every winter, but not like this. Still, many in this flood-hardened community waited until after dark to flee their homes, despite the warnings of police. And Neil Swenson says he's going back.
Live there. Go upstairs and sleep.
Time and time again, this big flatbed plowed through Snoqualmie's drowned streets to rescue stranded residents.
I don't feel comfortable being there the way it is right now.
Put the baby in the cab, all the way to the front.
Many children were sent to safety while their parents stayed behind to guard their homes.
It's the scariest thing I've ever seen my entire life.
Every hour or so, the flatbed emerged from the rain and darkness, fully loaded with evacuees. Carried bags of clothing and not much else. Do you figure you have anything left in there?
Not on the main floor.
This motorhome is taking people to the hospital.
To the local hospital, and then on to the North Bend Elementary School by bus. Here, the Red Cross provided hot meals and a dry bed, a place for the people of Snoqualmie to wait for morning light to reveal what the river has done to them this time.
Good afternoon, I'm David Curley.
And I'm Jean Anderson. We are living through some of the worst floods our region has ever seen. But tonight, flooding is only one of the problems.
On Lake Washington, the old I90 bridge collapses. A huge section of the I90 sinks to the bottom of the lake. We'll show you more of these amazing pictures.
Floodwaters have also broken mooring lines, sending a 135-foot ship down the Snohomish River and into the bridge abutment. And then the ship sank.
And devastating flooding, the worst on record on 4 rivers in western Washington, thousands forced from their homes. We'll have complete coverage of all of these major stories. We start with the incredible collapse of the old Lake Washington Bridge.
Well, David, it is one of the biggest disasters ever to hit western Washington. This morning, the old I-90 bridge suddenly broke apart, and large sections of it sank to the bottom of Lake Washington. Tugboats are now trying to stabilize the rest of the bridge, which engineers say could go at any time. Sky King was there to help capture the incredible sight on videotape, and our King 5 reporter Jim Foreman is at the scene right now with the details. Jim?
That's right. Right now, things do not look good at all. Moments ago, a news conference held where the bad news came. The I-90 bridge is closed in both directions until further notice. Let me say that again in case you don't believe it, because it's a hard thing to believe. Yes, the I-90 bridge is closed until further notice, stranding thousands of people on either side of Lake Washington who normally use the bridge, who now must use Evergreen Point or head north or south. Why the closure? You saw some of the pictures right now behind me. Why don't we take a look? They are actually pushing away part of the floating bridge. Off now to probably what is going to be a watery grave down below Lake Washington spans of this bridge. There were some people on the bridge when it went down, but they got off okay. We'll hear from them. But right now, let's pick up our story with the amazing sight. Just before 9 this morning, the center part of the I-90 bridge unceremoniously sank, setting off a chain reaction, violently tearing the 50-year-old link over Lake Washington apart.
The thing is breaking up right before our eyes. Sections are dropping off.
Early indications are water started flowing into these holes, and somehow a watertight door must have failed. But right now, no one is sure how. Out on the bridge, a team of contractors and a highway engineer scrambling to get off. 2 of them diving to safety. Did you think you were ever going to go down?
Yes, in a minute. Yeah, when we were in the middle of that bridge there.
And you just got off?
When we were running around on the pontoons. Anytime it could have gone. I was ready to go in the water.
The new bridge was immediately shut down. Fears that the sinking bridge would take out the new bridge. And that immediately created a traffic nightmare. Inside the I-90 tunnel, traffic was clogged, backed up solid. But the real concern now is getting I-90 open again.
Our whole emphasis right now is to stabilize the structure that broke free and get that so that we're comfortable with that, and then get divers down and take a look and see what kind of damage has been done.
And then around 1:30, as another storm blew over Lake Washington, even more of the bridge went down. Wow, unbelievable pictures, unbelievable traffic nightmare about to happen. What's it all going to mean tomorrow? Bill Southern with the State Highway Department is here. Any hope for a reopening for tomorrow morning?
No.
So what's your advice?
What I advise is people get together tonight with other people and decide what they're going to do. But the proper way to do this would be the carpool, vanpool, and metro.
Any extra buses going to be on the road, you know?
I just got off the phone with Paul Tulliver, the transit system, and he said they're pretty much bogged down right now with the buses they have. But they're going to try to make as many available as possible. But it's up to the people to help take the load and till we get this situation under control.
How long? Any guess how long it's going to be closed?
No idea. We've got divers in the water right now taking a look at some of the damage that has been to the new bridge and seeing what we can do to fix that, but we're not going to open that bridge until we're absolutely sure it's safe.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll check in with you for more information as the evening progresses, but there you have it, folks. The I-90 bridge closed until further notice. Start planning now. Hop on the phone and give yourself lots of extra time to get to where you need to go tomorrow. And of course, tonight, Dave and Jean, we have people heading back home, back east to eastern Washington from the Thanksgiving weekend, and folks who went east coming home too. So it could be a real mess starting tonight. We'll be watching.
Jim, let's talk about the damage to the new bridge.
Yes.
There was an inference there already that there is some damage. I talked to a diver who did a scan, and they have seen already debris from the old bridge on the new bridge. What else do you know about how much the new bridge has been damaged by this?
Well, right now they're still assessing the extent of the damage, but if I could give you a layman's explanation, the old bridge was floating over the cables that hold the new bridge. So you had the cables like this and the old bridge like this, and when the bridge went down on the cables, and that created a lot of ripping motion, and that is what they are checking on now, that there could have been some water that got into the watertight compartments, which they believe is what happened to the old bridge to begin with. So right now they are trying to figure out just how to fix the problems, and when they figure it out, we'll pass it along.
Okay, Jim Foreman, thanks. And again, we will remind you, the viewer, that the commute over the pass tonight is snowy and slick, and there will be no travel over I-90, so take Evergreen and north and south of Lake Washington tonight. More as this newscast continues. Dave?
We're talking months here of problems on Lake Washington. The old I-90 bridge turned 50 years old this year, and in a year and a half, it was to be reopened as part of the new I-90 project. It originally opened in July of 1940, the first Lake Washington floating bridge, known for, in the early years, for its bulge and center span. Main freeway connection between Seattle and the east side and the eastern part of the United States. 25 floating sections, 100 tons of steel and concrete. It closed a year and a half ago for renovations. The makeover was to be completed by 1992, and the old bridge would serve as eastbound lanes. The total I-90 project cost is $1.5 billion, the state's most expensive project since the Columbia River dams. $10 million had already been spent on the old bridge. Today's collapse, the second floating bridge to break in our state. In 1979, the western section of the Hood Canal Bridge broke apart in a storm, and it took 2.5 years to repair.
And this is an interstate connection. Well, that's just one incredible story. The other incredible story of the day is the devastation caused by floods in western Washington.
Floods which have now claimed at least one life. A state of emergency now in 18 counties. Some rivers are receding, others still to crest, though.
What we're seeing is generations of people's livelihood under torrents of floodwaters. In the Skagit, Mount Vernon residents are anxiously waiting for the Skagit to crest. Larry Callie is there once again today and spent today watching and empathizing with people who live there and hope someday to return there. Larry?
Gene, this is the Levee Walk in Mount Vernon, a popular strolling place on Sunday afternoons, but today the strollers are filled with anxiety. That anxiety, however, has lessened a bit. The Skagit River did crest about an hour and a half ago, and the main part of Mount Vernon is safe. The west side of Mount Vernon is already underwater. The Skagit went over its west bank last night, flooding 10 blocks of a residential area. The main part of Mount Vernon is on the east side of the river. 2 walls of sandbags were put up overnight and storefronts fortified. At Red Cross shelters, evacuees waited, hoping for the best, but expecting the worst.
If it does go over, it will probably take my trailer right down the river and everything I own.
Goodbye rugs, goodbye my nice maple furniture, goodbye my beautiful Davenport, goodbye everything.
At Mount Vernon churches this Sunday, there were prayers for flood victims and offerings of help, should there be more of them.
The night they called and asked if we could house some people, and we did house them at the West Wind Motel. I mean, just for a few nights.
Yeah.
But we could also put them here in the church, too, if they need that kind of housing.
The main part of Mount Vernon is safe. However, the concern now is for what they call the new downtown of Mount Vernon. That's the Mount Vernon Mall, about a half-mile north of the city. It isn't so much that the river will overrun its banks, but that the dike that holds the river back will give way, flooding the mall. Mike? Sorry, David? Gene?
And concern for all those people around them. Larry Callie live in Mount Vernon.
Also near Mount Vernon, a new break in the levee around Fur Island has let the river pour once more into Fur Island near Conway. Bob Simmons reports it has forced the second evacuation of Fur Island in just 2 weeks.
Fur Island has been hit much harder than it was when the levee first broke 2 weeks ago. The water is deeper and wider. Those few islanders who had moved back home had to move again, and the waters into homes that were spared before. That emergency rock barrier the Army Corps built in front of the broken dike, it's gone. This was the scene on Monday as the Army Corps of Engineers finally closed off the torrent that had ripped through the Fur Island levee. The Corps of Engineers pulled off of this job Wednesday before noon. A spokesman for the Corps told me they had built it to equal flood stage, and in his words, that's all that's in our jurisdiction to do. So no work was done here Wednesday, nor Wednesday night, nor Thursday night. Friday, with the river rising, they began again to haul rock under the barrier, but it was too late. Water was already topping it. And yesterday, the $400,000 emergency repair job disappeared. It's little solace to those who used to live on Fur Island, but that renewed break in the levee eased the pressure on the river upstream a few miles and possibly saved downtown Mount Vernon from destruction. In Skagit County, I'm Bob Simmons, King 5 News.
And on top of all the flooding, now this, a 135-foot ship broke loose from its moorings in Snohomish and now sits on its side in the river near Everett. It threatened to run into a bridge for a while, but as King 5's Julie Blacklow reports, it went down and didn't take a whole lot else with it.
The 135-foot SeaTac is a privately owned boat, which someone had been living on. It was moored up in Snohomish, but broke loose from its moorings and floated on its own towards Everett, carried along by the swollen floodwaters of the Snohomish River. It stopped at an abutment under the Highway 2 Snohomish Bridge. There was worry it would crash into the bridge and damage it, so the road was closed and all the attention then turned to the ship. 2 tugboats arrived and began an effort to haul the ship away and save it. But the big boat began taking on water through its cargo doors, and there was nothing anyone could do but watch. In less than 15 minutes, the SeaTac was down, where officials hoped it would stay for now. If the boat stays put, it will be left there for now. There are just too many other crises to deal with at the moment. In Everett, I'm Julie Blacklow, King 5 News.
Several miles to the north where that ship was moored, the rising river has washed away the land under some Burlington Northern Railroad tracks. The river water had been building up and pushing against the land under these tracks. Finally, it gave way and took about 30 feet of land with it. The waters have continued to pound the dirt, and more is washing away all the time. For one man who preferred to stay off camera, it was good news.
I believe this is all blessing in disguise as far as releasing the water that's deadlocked between the railroad tracks and the road. Otherwise, our houses would be in a deadlocked lake.
A car washed out into the newly formed lake. No one was in it when the water took it away, but the Snohomish continues to rise in the town of Snohomish and in the surrounding towns as well.
And one of the state's largest employers, the Boeing Company, tonight joins the list of thousands who this Thanksgiving are flooded out. Some of the flooding, largely in urban King County, is as bad in the urban areas as anywhere in western Washington. Glenn Filer reports from the Cedar River.
Water from the Cedar River is up over large sections of the Renton Airport. Some Boeing flight lines are covered, but Boeing says damage is minimal. But up the Cedar River, a more violent story as raging floodwaters take their toll. The Maple Valley Highway is closed. Here in a neighborhood known as Cedar Grove, the damage is expected to be major. Ron Barchi returned home from vacation yesterday afternoon. He found his house, his car, and his pickup all swamped in the floodwaters. He doesn't know what he can say. He can't get to his house.
I didn't even attempt to go in. It would have been suicide to even try.
Mike Sippen's place is flooded just a few yards away, his third major flood since he moved here in the early 70s.
The part that hurts is the personal things, and it'll take a year to clean this up, at least.
For most rivers, the question for residents living alongside is, when does the river crest and begin to go down? That's not the case here on the Cedar, because the Cedar is fed by Chester Morse Lake, a reservoir for the city of Seattle's water supply. And government officials are having to make decisions on when to release water from that lake in order to save the dam from breaking. But emergency officials say the lake level is now dropping, and conditions along the Cedar River should improve. It seems that disasters always have their silver linings. As residents of Cedar Grove hover near a fire waiting for the water to recede, some here resolve to stay. This is, you say, your third major flood?
Yeah.
When are you going to give up on this?
I would rather live here like this than in the city any day.
In Maple Valley, Glenn Farley, King 5 News.
And maybe you consider this a silver lining, too. The weather's getting colder, and emergency management officials say lower temperatures in the mountains mean much of the rain will now turn to snow. The Cedar River was the site earlier today for a dramatic rescue, too. It happened when a group of people were apparently trying to cross in a canoe. They were headed to a dry island at the McDonald Grove Road when a young child fell into the raging waters. A second person also had trouble trying to cross. However, it's reported both were pulled by rope safely ashore.
We'll get our top story coverage tonight with the collapse of the old Interstate 90 bridge and what the state is doing now to try to stabilize the new one. This is not a simple job. Crews are working fast, and they are under intense pressure.
And once again, an enemy seems to be Mother Nature. For the latest, we go live to King 5's Jim Foreman. Jim?
It's a familiar enemy to Western Washington, and right now, Mother Nature is not giving us a break here at the bridge. The wind is picking up. It is gusting to about 20 or so knots, and that is not good. Anything above that is a real danger to this bridge. The heavy equipment is floating into place tonight. Repair crews are on alert right now to work round-the-clock shifts to get the bridge fixed. And step one happened this afternoon when 7 tugs hooked onto the new bridge and started steaming against the wind. They are here to hold the bridge in place to keep it from being blown away by the gusting winds. The next step is repairing the broken cables that hold the bridge in place.
We've got now a total of 13 cables that are gone, all in sort of one long section, plus one cable severely damaged.
The cable sat right